something.
Well, I can understand that. So your concerns about transparency, as you're saying, that brings up a current topical issue, which is with Hillary Clinton running for president and her emails. And there was a lack of transparency. Would that, because of her lack of transparency and the apparent transmission of secret documentation, do you believe that she should be indicted by the FBI, which is investigating this, for that violation of State Department regulations? And would that prevent you from voting for her?
No, I don't honestly think she should be indicted for it. I think that, there was a vetting process for that, and, through that process, I mean, she came out and apologized for it. She should have not had that information on her personal server or whatever.
But that's a violation. That was a violation of State Department regulations, that she was the head of the State Department. So it's not a question of apology. It's actually a crime.
Right. The issue that I had is that I don't think that she was trying to hide anything. I don't think that there was anything that she was trying to hide, because she willingly gave up that server so that they could gather that information.
Actually, she was required to give it up to the FBI because they seized it, and she deleted 30,000 emails prior to doing that and wiped the server. Would you call that transparency?
Again, it's a tough call, because perhaps her position as Secretary of State is even higher above. Her clearance is higher than that of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That she holds a position that she has to maintain that, I don't want to call it secrecy, but there has to be, information that's exchanged with the executive branch and, Department of Defense and things like that may not want to be, put out there. Trust me, I believe in transparency 100%.
Okay.
I don't believe Secretary Clinton did something purposely by having it sent to her private email, knowing that, we're all smart enough to know anything you do on a device is going to be tracked down later, now or later. Even if you delete it, they can find it. So I don't think she's stupid enough to think that whatever she was doing, she was going to try to cover up. But, again, I wouldn't look at her as a criminal. I would just look to her in the future not to make the same mistakes. That's all.
No problem. Again, it's a current issue, so I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
And I appreciate it.
Also currently, very big item, which would be the Syrian refugees, which also relates to Middle East policy and national security. So in that, I would say, one, do you support President Obama in trying to bring in 10,000 Syrian refugees with the shortened time frame to do background checks? And what is your views, more largely, on the Middle East policy, especially in reference to ISIS?
So I believe that we can still be a place of refuge for people, seeking, refuge from political or social or religious persecution. I think that these people in the Middle East, in countries like Syria, are, in a desperate situation. I don't think anybody wants to pack up from their homeland and leave, honestly. I don't think that a Syrian refugee wakes up one day and says, you know what, I just want to leave. I have a hard enough time going on vacation for 10 or 14 days and not becoming homesick if I go to Florida. So I don't take that issue lightly. I think that if people really are trying to get here in an effort to, to get away from a lot of the issues that are prevalent, they don't want to be a part of it, then I don't see any harm in that, as long as we strengthen our national security and our border protection. They will tell you our biggest issues are not so much immigration from overseas. Our biggest issue is immigration from Mexico and the drug mules and the drug lords and all of the factions that are happening right here within walking distance to Mexico. So we have to strengthen our border patrols and our borders and really tighten up our national security. Our national security, again, these background checks, I think that they're crucial, and they really need to take it a step further. Maybe, perhaps, there may be a little bit longer lag time. I think that we can't just rush and open a floodgate of people. It's got to be a similar process to us getting our our ability to, or our passport to travel. It's got to be very, very strategically done, but in a non-discriminatory fashion. I'm not discriminatory towards any religion or any ethnicity wanting to seek refuge for our country. And I think that, honestly, refugees for our area, for Utica, for example, my insurance agency, 80% of my customers are Burmese customers. They're from Burma. And they're really fueling our economy in certain aspects. One being my business, one being the car dealership where my office is located. They sell cars to refugees. The Bosnian population that came in Utica did great revitalization of our neighborhoods with their buildings and their homes, and they've started businesses to create jobs and economic activity. So I think that, again, strengthening our national security to weed out the bad ones is the only way we're going to be able to justify the means of which we continue to allow people to come into our country. But at no point do I believe we just close the door and say enough is enough. I've just never been an advocate for that.
Okay, so let me be sure if I understand. So you're saying you disagree with President Obama in what he has done, which is reduce the time that is allowed for the background checks from 18 to 24 months to less than a year, and allow the immigrants in. So you oppose that?
I don't necessarily oppose it. I just believe that as long as more guidelines are established and better technology is used for these background checks, and that people are properly vetted, if they can do it in a shorter period of time by cutting out some of the red tape that may exist that may have nothing to do with the actual process itself, then listen, I think in any process there's always issues, or there's always duplications in a process that delay action. I think that there is the ability. I think 18 to 24 months is an exorbitant amount of time for people seeking refuge from issues. I mean, that's a very, very long time. That's like a prison sentence, in my opinion. So,
that's the standard.
I'm shocked that it takes them that long to perform that background. So no, I don't disagree with the president. I just, like I said, I want to hone in on our national security, and whatever we're doing, we need to strengthen it if we're going to go down a route of decreasing the amount of time, to let these people into our country.
Okay. Again, that's a very large issue. It's ongoing, and
I know.
and we're getting several reports that say that that's not the case right now, that it's not stringent. But let's ask a bigger question. The other part of the question, which is the Middle East and ISIS. Where do you stand on that?
I think that we should be fighting them with all of our available resources. I think that we don't want time to lapse. We don't want to give them credibility. I think that this country needs to do a better job in minimizing their publicity for ISIS. And what I mean by that is I think they're giving too much credibility to just some people who are completely out of their minds and want to seek harm on our way of life. But at the same time, I think we need to devote, our national defense. We need to utilize technology. I don't want to put soldiers on the ground in the Middle East. I don't want to put them on the ground in Syria or back in Afghanistan or on the borders of Iraq or, in any of that. I don't want to put them in that situation. I think that there's much, I think we've been a more effective country when we've utilized our technology. I think under the Clinton administration, I think he did a good job utilizing technology. And I think, if anything, we should be crippling these people economically to put an end to their ability to be funded to do the things that they're doing. And that's why I'm a big advocate of our country moving away from our dependency on foreign oil. I think that our greatest opportunity to stop funding, terrorism in the Middle East is to stop purchasing oil from them and stop purchasing it for the production of gasoline in our vehicles. I mean, there's no reason. Listen, there was a vote, I think in 2004 or 2006 in Congress, that there was a vote that every vehicle in this country by like 2015 should get 30 miles to the gallon. And it was defeated. I believe Congressman At the time, Congressman Bowler voted against it. It wasn't 2006, it may have been 2005 or 2000. Voted against that measure when we've had the technology for the last 25 years to get every vehicle, trucks included, 30 plus miles to the gallon on the highway to reduce that dependency on foreign oil. We're seeing Saudi Arabia pumping out oil in an effort to stave off competition and to eliminate them altogether, so that in a couple of years from now, or less than that, maybe a year and a half, gas prices go back to $4, $4.50, $5 per gallon in some areas. And that is in an effort so they can make even more money to fuel the groups like ISIS and other radical groups that are against our way of life.
Okay. Well, before I get to and I want to cover, and obviously there's limited time, so there's a lot of issues of what you just said, or a lot of questions about that. But let me get back to, so are you saying that, and I want to make sure I understand you, I don't want to misphrase anything, are you saying that you want to have America place sanctions on ISIS, which is a terrorist group, and not a nation? Is that what I'm understanding that you said?
That's correct. I want us to put sanctions on, obviously, the group of ISIS, but at the same time, we should be realistic in our views of how ISIS is funded. And ISIS is funded by other nations that do not agree with our way of life and our democracy. So we have to, it's a chain reaction, and I think it's something that we have to be mindful of before we come up with treaties and agreements with foreign nations. And like I said, I think the biggest driver in the Middle East of terrorism is our dependency on foreign fuel.
Okay, then by what you've just said, including the sanctions against ISIS, the group, you said also to sanctions against countries that support them, which would be Iran. So are you saying that we should break the Iran nuclear deal because ISIS is supported by Iran, and place further sanctions on Iran for supporting ISIS?
No, I don't think we should break the nuclear agreement. I just think we need to, further the discussions and this is where our Central Intelligence needs to come into play, and they need to be gathering information about what these foreign nations are doing and finding that channel of money. And really then, once we have a true outlook on it, and it's been put together, and it's really, we can then create stronger sanctions against those nations. But I wouldn't repeal or work to get rid of the Iran nuclear deal. I think that was a necessity, especially in these times. I mean, they were so worried about Iran and their nuclear facilities and their productions and their policies, and I think that the administration, when I looked at the plan, there was a few pitfalls, but there was some really good stuff there as far as their not being able to have so much uranium on site, not being able to produce underground, or some of these crazy things that they were doing there. I think that addressed a specific problem. I think terrorism and the funding of terrorism is a completely separate issue that needs to be handled differently.
Okay. Well, obviously there's a lot of issues, and Congress is a big, very big subject. There's a lot of issues, and everything leads to other things. So I look forward to, we're going to speak again, and we'll go more in depth into, or specifically onto certain issues. But I do want to ask a couple final things before I let you go. One, let me ask you, how, in terms of funding, which is always important in any race, for the Federal Elections Commission, I don't see that you've reached the $5,000 limit. Have you raised $5,000 yet?
No, we haven't worked on any fundraising right now. It's really a grassroots campaign because of the fact that we didn't know if another Democrat was going to enter the race or what the landscape looked like. We've been working with, for example, I have a marketing company that's doing some work for me as an in-kind contribution. So that will be several thousands of dollars. When we filed our report, we did not have to file for 2015. We didn't have to file on the 31st because we hadn't officially announced we're going to file our FEC 1 or FEC 2 until January.
Right.
So we did not have to file a report, the annual report, on the 31st. But we have, again, raised several thousands of dollars in in-kind contributions. And basically, again, right now it's all just been communicating with the Democratic committee members and chair people throughout the district, trying to make sure that we get their support prior to working on fundraising. I think that, there's a process, and I think fundraising is step 2. I think step 1 is gaining and getting some of that, that moral support, I guess you'd call it, or structural support.